Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and I'm back with another week of spoilers in Road to Revival. This week we got a little bit of light content in terms of cards in the set, but we definitely have a lot of promos to talk about, so let's just dive right in. So first up, we have Black Death Dragon Abygale Rebuddy. This card is doing basically a little bit of everything that Abygale has done in the past. His first ability is if a Black Dragon set is on your field, his size is reduced by 1, so that way he could fit into any board state that Black Dragons could use as long as you're playing set spells, which isn't very hard because a lot of good tech is in those set spells. And then his other ability is a counteract ability, Winds of Atonement, so to activate this ability, all you have to do is pay 2 life, and if you do, destroy a Black Dragon on the field or a card on your opponent's field, and if you destroyed a card, you get to draw a card and mill the opponent's 3, and then you can only use this once per turn, and then he's got double attack. Like I said, he's just doing a little bit of everything on what Black Dragons has been doing in the past in terms of Abygale. This could easily go into Black Dragon Destruction, Black Dragon Set, or Black Dragon Mill, or you could even use him in a combination deck where you're just playing an Abygale Good Stuff deck. He definitely has a lot of possibility on how you want to play him and how he could be used. Next, we have Puzzle of Friendship. So this is a Legend World draw spell, where it has the extra benefit of if you have a card with a great spell on your field, then you don't have to pay the cast cost of the card. Otherwise, it's pay 2 gauge, and then you get to draw 3 and discard 2. Another Legend World draw spell, it's mainly going to be seen in either combination with either Apocalypse or Ragnarok, but just as a generic draw 3, discard 2 can be pretty good for a lot of different decks, so even if they're not running a great spell set on their field, they still might want to pay the 2 gauge to just draw 3 and discard 2. So I definitely think this card is going to be a really good and highly played card. Next, we have Great Fiend Yamigedo Rebuddy. So 100 Demons finally got their Rebuddy, and he's looking to be pretty good. So his primary effect is he gets all Thunder Mines of cards in his soul, and then his secondary effect is at the beginning of each player's turn, you basically get to tutor out 2 different 100 Demons from your deck or hand and put them into the soul. So obviously, being able to tutor out whatever Thundermine abilities you want and stuff them into the soul on both players' turns is pretty strong. And then he even has his own Thundermine effect, where when your card's attack is nullified, you deal 2 damage to the opponent, and then he's got triple attack and soul guard. So he's just looking to be a very powerful card because you could stack his soul with different Thunder Mines to make it very hard for the opponents to play anything without taking some residual burn damage. And then the last new card that we got spoiled in the set is Purgatory Knight's leader, Demios Sword Dragon Rebuddy. So Purgatory Knights finally gets their Rebuddy, and I just wish he was a little bit better, but that being said, he is still a pretty decent card nonetheless. His primary effect is if another armor dragon on your field would be destroyed, you basically get to put it into his soul instead. Very standard considering Orcus started normalizing that, so that way you could kind of use some soul synergies. On top of which, he has a very standard counteract effect, where you basically get to destroy one of your armor dragons, and then you get to choose one of the following 2 effects. You could either stand the card up, and if you do, draw a card, or for this turn, the damage dealt to you is reduced by 1. So both of those effects are pretty good. The unfortunate thing with his stand effect is if he is somehow unable to stand, then you do not get the draw. So if he is somehow locked into the rest position and can't stand, then you don't get to draw. But his other effect for a more defensive purpose is really good because the effect does stack, and you could potentially reduce the damage you are taking by quite a significant number. Because in Darkness Dragon World, you could easily rebuild your board, so that way you could get either effect off. And then he's got Move and Soul Guard. What was really needed to be added to him was some of the basic protections, considering Purgatory Knights have a distinct lack on any of the basic protections, so that really is holding them back, and I wish he definitely had some of that basic protection that a lot of other decks have been getting. But outside of that, he is looking to be a pretty decent card nonetheless. Then we got some alternate SP artworks of some other cards. So Nanomachine Tsukikage rebuddy was originally printed in Perfected Time Rulers, but for some reason they decided to give him an SP art in here, probably because Byakuya rebuddy is in here. So here's Tsukikage in some form. Third Omnilord, Mysaria is getting an SP art as well. And the 9th Omnilord, Makuro, is also getting an SP art. That's all that we got in terms of cards in the set this week. So we also got a slew of different promos also being shown off. And starting off the promo hype train is going to be Super Sun Dragon Balsalla rebuddy. So Balle already got a rebuddy in the set as one of his impact forms, so now Balsalla is getting a promo rebuddy, and Balsalla is looking to be really, really insane. So his call cost is put one or more monsters from your field into a soul and pay 2 gauge, fairly standard, and then if this card has cards in his soul, damage dealt to you other than your own card effects is reduced by 3, and this card gets plus 10,000 power, plus 10,000 defense, and plus 2 crit. So damage reduction is already pretty solid of an effect, and on top of that, the stat bonuses and crit boost just help make the card that much more powerful. And then he even has a really good counteract ability where you get to choose a monster on your opponent's center and pay 1 gauge. If you do, drop a soul from the chosen card and put the card into the drop zone. So that's really powerful. Even if you might not be able to pick off the soul directly, being able to just put it into the drop zone is still a very powerful effect because it bypasses a lot of the anti-destruction protection. And then on top of all that, he even has a triple attack and soul guard. So altogether, he is just looking to be a very powerful card. So next up, we have the Great Raging Dragon, and as a result, dual dragons definitely get a really powerful impact monster to play around with. So his call cost is pay 3 gauge and put a dual dragon from your field to the drop zone, fairly standard for impact monsters. And then this card on your field can't be destroyed, can't be bounced, and its abilities can't be nullified, so he has his own built-in basic protections. And then if you have 3 or more different dual dragons in your drop zone, this card gets plus 2 crit. Then if you have 6 or more, while it's doing battle and it's attacking alone, your opponent can't use counter effects. So being able to limit what the opponent can do, on top of him having 5 crit, is very, very powerful because it makes it very hard for the opponent to really do anything. But what's even crazier is that when this card attacks, if you have 9 or more different dual dragons in your drop zone, you attack your opponent's resources by dealing them 2 damage, dropping 2 of their gauge, and then your opponent discards a card from their hand. He is just a really powerful card because he's just doing a lot, and he is very hard to deal with. And then on top of all that, he even has Penetrate and Triple Attack. The disruption effect can happen potentially 3 times due to the triple attack because it isn't hard locked once per turn. So this is definitely a very powerful card for dual dragons, and definitely is a card to play and build around for a new dual dragons deck. The next promo that we got is Dragowizard Qinus Axia rebuddy. So I was hoping this card would be in the set, but seeing him get printed nonetheless is very, very good because I personally like this card. What he's doing is all wizards on your field can't be destroyed or bounced by your opponent's card effects, and then damage dealt to your opponents by your card effects can't be reduced. Being able to stop the damage reduction so that way your burn effects can actually hit is very, very powerful because it also forces them to use Grace. If they don't have Grace, then there's not really a way to stop the damage. So this first effect alone is really good for just all wizard decks in general, not just Drago wizards. He definitely has a lot of other implementations, considering he wants to be played in a Dragowizard deck with Drum, because when this card enters the field or attacks, it deals 1 damage to you and your opponent. Then, if a monster with Drum in its card name is on your field, you get to draw a card. So obviously the card wants to be paired up with the wizard form of Drum. It has some interesting synergy with the 5th Omni Drums, because you could run either of the Mugen drums in with him, and because he damages both you and your opponent, means that you can trigger your Mugen drums effects off of him. So that's just something interesting to note. And then his last effect is when you cast a spell for this turn, this card gets plus 15,000 power and double attack, and then this ability can only be activated once per turn. He's just looking to be a pretty powerful card. Obviously, he has a whole bunch of different utility on how you want to play him, depending on the deck that you want him to be in, because he interacts with wizards, he interacts with Drum, and he's just doing a lot. And then lastly, we got probably the card a lot of people are going to be talking about, which is White Dragon Hermit Nanase rebuddy. So he is a water card, and water has been a fairly unused attribute in a fairly niche deck that hasn't really seen a whole lot of play. But I think this card is powerful enough to warrant trying to build a new water deck around him. So his call cost is put 2 water cards from your drop zone into the soul and pay 1 gauge. And then your opponent, if they were to gain any more gauge past 3 gauge, they must drop until they have 2 gauge. Hardlocking the opponent at 2 gauge essentially is very powerful, because depending on the matchup, it can sometimes shut out the opponent from being able to play their deck, but definitely limiting the amount of resources that they have nonetheless is still very powerful no matter the deck. And then on top of that, he has another ability where at the start of each player's attack phase, if your opponent has 1 or less gauge, you gain 2 life, draw a card, and all water cards on your field get plus 10,000 power, plus 10,000 defense, and double attack. Your standard stat boost and resource gaining. And then his counteract ability is you can drop a soul from this card, and your opponent has to drop 1 gauge. And that ability is not hard-locked once per turn, so if you can find a way to keep filling up his soul at counter speed, you could keep dropping the opponent's gauge. Which is pretty insane, because not only does it control what the opponent can do, but it also fuels his own effect on top of that. And then he has Penetrate, Soul Guard, and Counterattack. This card's just looking to be really, really solid because of the gauge manipulation that he can do for the opponent, making it so it's very hard to play your cards. And the only thing that he doesn't really have, or Waters as a whole doesn't really have, is any inherent protection. So that is probably his one big weakness, is you have to try to nullify his ability or pick him off before his ability can really start going. But outside of the lack of protection, he is looking to be a very, very strong card. That's kind of it for this week of spoilers. It was pretty light for the stuff in the set, but what we did get is all pretty good and pretty interesting. And then a lot of the new promos that we're seeing are also really, really good. Promos are starting to worry me a little bit more and more, because certain shops are not able to open up to host the events for players to even get the promos. So I think the promos are definitely going to be on the scarce side, and I think that's quite unfortunate, because Bushi Road doesn't really seem like they're going to find any ways to get these cards out to the players other than monthly shop tournaments. But if the shop can't hold the tournaments, then the players can't get the promos, and then these cards that are also very, very good just don't really become accessible. And yeah, that's just a real shame, because a lot of these cards are just really good. So that's kind of all I have for this video. Feel free to leave a comment on your thoughts about the cards in the set or the promos, or if you just want to leave a comment in general. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next video.